November 2023. A fierce snowstorm sweeps across the Appalachian Mountains. Black Ridge Station is nearly abandoned. Only a few dim yellow lights remain, while the wind howls through the rusted metal roofs. The protagonist is Daniel Brooks, a 34-year-old railroad engineer who recently lost his job after the railway line he maintained was permanently shut down. He plans to take the last night train to Pittsburgh. Then he notices a train that isn't listed on any departure board. No train number, no conductor, no station announcement, just a long black train slowly rolling into the platform at exactly 2:13 a.m. Daniel boards car number 4. Inside are 12 silent passengers, an elderly woman holding a worn suitcase, a young woman reading a book, a man dressed in an old military uniform, an 8-year-old boy, a businessman staring at his wristwatch, though its second hand never moves. The first thing Daniel notices is that no one speaks. No one looks at each other. No one uses a phone. As the train departs, Daniel opens his map application. GPS has completely disappeared. Every navigation app displays an error. Outside the windows, there is nothing but endless white fog. Not a single city light can be seen. Roughly 20 minutes later, the train begins to slow down. The electronic display reads Ash Crossing. Daniel has never heard of the station. The doors slide open. One elderly man quietly stands up and steps off the train. The doors close. Daniel turns to the passenger beside him. Where did that man go? The passenger stares at him with genuine confusion. What man? Daniel points toward the empty seat. No one remembers anyone sitting there. The seat is perfectly clean, as if it has never been occupied. Every 20 minutes, the train stops again. Each time, only one passenger leaves. The station names become stranger and stranger. Hollow Creek, Raven Junction, Silent Mile, Last Light, No Return. Daniel tries opening the doors himself. They refuse to move. Only the passenger who has somehow been chosen can leave. Everyone else simply waits in silence as though they accepted this fate long ago. A man wearing an old-fashioned conductor's uniform appears. He has no face, only a featureless patch of darkness. He extends one hand. Ticket. Daniel presents his digital ticket. The conductor says nothing. After several silent seconds, he raises an antique ticket punch. Instead of punching the ticket, he presses it into empty air. Daniel suddenly feels a sharp sting. He looks down. A tiny punched hole has appeared on his wrist. Blood slowly seeps from it. The conductor walks away without another word. From that moment on, every time the train reaches another station, the mark grows darker. Daniel begins noticing figures outside. At first, they are only distant silhouettes, then hundreds of people line both sides of the railway tracks. Every one of them is staring directly at the train. None of them move. None of them have eyes, only empty black sockets. When the train reaches the next station, every figure disappears without a trace. For the first time, the little boy speaks. You know, this isn't a train that carries people. Daniel frowns. Then what does it carry? The boy quietly answers. It carries memories. Daniel laughs nervously. Then the boy asks a simple question. What was your mother's name? Daniel opens his mouth, but no answer comes. He has forgotten. After every station, Daniel loses another memory. The name of his elementary school, his birthday, his father's face, the smell of his childhood home, the sound of his girlfriend's voice. He opens his wallet. Every family photograph has turned into a blank white sheet. His phone contacts contain only empty numbers. His photo gallery is nothing but black images. It is as though his entire life is being erased. Only 3 passengers remain: Daniel, the young woman, the little boy. For the first time, the young woman looks up from her book. Daniel notices the title. It isn't a novel. It is his life. Every page describes events only he could know. The final chapter remains completely blank. She gently closes the book. When only 1 passenger remains, the final page will finally be written. The display changes one final time. Terminus. The word belongs to no language Daniel has ever seen. The doors open. The little boy quietly steps off. He disappears into the darkness. Only Daniel and the young woman remain. She smiles softly. It's your turn now. She steps off the train. She vanishes. The lights suddenly go out. Darkness fills the train. Then, one by one, every empty seat behind Daniel becomes occupied. Hundreds of passengers, every single one of them, is Daniel. Daniel at 5 years old. Daniel as a teenager. Daniel in his 20s. An elderly Daniel. A dead Daniel. They all stare directly at him. Then in perfect unison they whisper, "We were all the last passenger once." The train rushes into an enormous tunnel with no visible end. Outside the windows, there are countless other trains. Each one contains only a single passenger. Every passenger is staring back at Daniel. Their expressions are hollow. Their eyes plead for help, as if they have been trapped there for centuries. Daniel screams. He suddenly wakes up. He is lying on a bench inside Black Ridge Station. The clock reads 2:12 a.m. Everything seems like nothing more than a nightmare. He stands up, ready to leave. Then a long black train slowly glides into the station. No train number, no conductor, no passengers seem to notice it. Only Daniel can see it. The doors of car number 4 slowly open. Inside, an older version of Daniel sits alone, thin, pale, expressionless. The old man raises one finger to his lips. Silence. Then he whispers, "This time, don't get on the train." Daniel instinctively steps backward. At that exact moment, the station speakers crackle to life. "Train! Number 213 is now departing." Daniel turns toward the announcement. When he looks back, the train is gone. The next morning, Daniel searches every historical railroad archive in the United States. No active railway has ever operated under the designation Train 213. Eventually, inside an old newspaper archive dated 1954, he discovers a forgotten headline. Night Train 213 disappears in the Appalachian Mountains. Every passenger missing, no wreckage ever found. In the accompanying black and white photograph, one detail freezes the blood in his veins. Behind the window of car number 4, a man is staring directly into the camera. It is Daniel, not an ancestor, not someone who resembles him. It is unquestionably Daniel, the same older version he saw aboard the train. The photograph was taken in 1954. Daniel would not be born until 1989. One terrifying question remains unanswered. If the train never stops, where are all of its passengers truly going? Daniel looked deeper into the carriage. At the far end stood the older version of himself, the same man from the photograph, but now his face was missing. He was becoming the conductor. The older Daniel shook his head. "Don't believe the book," he whispered. "I tried to warn you." Suddenly, hands slammed against every window from the outside. Hundreds of forgotten passengers stood in the tunnel, trapped between the train and the stone walls. Their faces were incomplete. Some had no eyes, some had no mouths, some looked almost human. The little boy appeared among them, still wearing the red scarf. He pressed both palms against the glass. "It found another way," he said. The tunnel began to change. The brick walls stretched outward, becoming an endless underground platform. A black sign emerged from the fog. Terminus. At the far end of the platform stood a set of enormous iron doors. Something was striking them from the other side. Each impact shook the station. Daniel finally understood. The passengers were not victims of the train, they were the locks. Every stolen memory strengthened the barrier at Terminus. When one passenger disappeared, one lock weakened. When all the passengers were erased, the doors would open. The train had returned empty because every lock was now broken. The faceless conductor had sacrificed himself to bring Daniel back before it was too late. The voice over the speakers grew louder. "Take your position." The uniform on the seat rose into the air. It wrapped itself around Daniel's body. His vision darkened. His face began to disappear. Margaret pulled the pocket watch from her coat. Thomas Hale's notebook had mentioned one final rule. The train could never stop moving through time, but if its clock was forced backward, the route would reset. Margaret turned the watch's hands away from 2:13. The moment she moved them to 2:12, the entire train screamed. Not the passengers, the train itself. The walls twisted, the windows cracked. The iron doors at Terminus stopped shaking. Daniel tore off the conductor's coat and threw it onto the tracks. The older version of himself began to fade. Before disappearing, he pointed toward the engine. "The first ticket," he said. "Destroy the first ticket." Daniel and Margaret ran through the carriages as the train began moving. Each carriage contained fragments of stolen lives, wedding photographs with blank faces, letters written in forgotten languages, toys belonging to children who no longer existed. They reached the engine room. There was no driver. Instead, thousands of paper tickets were suspended in the air, connected by black threads. At the center floated a single ticket stained with old blood. Passenger Elias Voss. Date November 17th, 1888. Destination Terminus. Margaret recognized the name from her grandfather's notes. Elias Voss had been a railway engineer who disappeared while constructing the original Black Ridge Tunnel. He had discovered something underground and tried to seal it, but the thing beneath the mountain offered him a bargain. It promised to return his dead family if he built a route to Terminus. Elias created the first train. He became its first conductor. Every conductor after him had only delayed the journey. Daniel reached for the ticket. The black threads wrapped around his wrist. A voice spoke inside his mind, using the voices of everyone he had ever loved. "Destroy the ticket, and every passenger will be forgotten forever." Daniel hesitated. If the ticket was destroyed, the train would end. But so would every remaining trace of the people trapped inside it. The little boy would never return. The young woman would vanish. The missing passengers of 1954 would be erased from history. Behind them, the iron doors at Terminus began opening. A thin line of red light appeared between them. Something enormous moved on the other side. Daniel made his decision. He tore the first ticket in half. The train stopped. For the first time since 1888, Train 213 became completely silent. The black threads snapped. Every ticket burst into flame. The passengers appeared throughout the carriages, their faces and memories returning. The little boy looked at Daniel and smiled. "You remembered us," he said. Then the train began collapsing into ash. Margaret and Daniel ran toward the nearest door as the platform disappeared around them. Behind the iron doors, a gigantic shape reached through the opening. Its fingers were longer than train carriages. Daniel and Margaret jumped from the train just before it vanished. They landed inside the abandoned tunnel. The gate behind them slammed shut. The rails were gone. The walls were solid stone. Dawn light entered through the tunnel entrance. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The wound on Daniel's wrist had disappeared. The black lines were gone. Margaret opened her grandfather's notebook. Every page connected to train 213 was now blank. They had done it. The train had been destroyed, or so they believed. 3 months later, Daniel received a new job at Pittsburgh Central Station. He avoided night shifts, abandoned platforms, and any train arriving without a number. Life slowly returned to normal. Then, one evening, a little girl approached his information desk. She placed an old, blood-stained ticket in front of him. Passenger Daniel Brooks. Departure Pittsburgh Central. Time 2:13 a.m. Destination beyond terminus. Daniel looked up. The girl had no eyes. Behind her, every clock in the station stopped. The loudspeakers crackled. "Attention passengers, train number 214 is now arriving." Outside, beneath the city lights, a long black train slowly entered the station. It was newer than train 213, longer. Its windows were filled with thousands of silent passengers. And standing at the front of the train, dressed in a conductor's uniform, was Margaret Hale.